And we're in. Welcome to Curiosity and Command podcast, supported by Kaizen Summit. In each episode, we sit down with thoughtful people to explore leadership, discipline, growth, and the ideas that shape how we live and work. This week, I'm joined by Mr. Henry Brewster.
Hi, bud. How are you?
I'm very well, my friend. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, for those of you that do not know you as well as I do, can you just give us a quick wave top overview of where you've come from and what's brought you up to this point here today?
So, my name's Henry. I am a former Royal Marine physical training instructor and then went across to the dark side of academia. So, during my time in the Corps, did an undergrad in strength and conditioning in tactical populations, and then followed that on. Really wanted to just treat myself straight into a master's in human performance optimization, and then had the opportunity to come and do some lecturing and took it wholeheartedly, and that's now what I do, along with some of the bits and bobs. So yeah, that's kind of a brief, very brief wave top overview, but yeah, that's kind of who I am.
Can you talk about your transition from pointy end of the stick in the military and that transition into the world of academia?
There's two very different ends of the spectrum. It's been quite fun, to be fair. I was thinking about this last night, actually, where I was fortunate in the fact that there's a few pieces of right place, right time, where I was about a year into the Masters when I put my chit in, timed it around a few other pieces as well. I kind of knew I wanted to go. I was ready. It wasn't a kind of shotgun out the door type wedding. It was right now. I'm ready to go at this moment, and thought about it over a period of time. It wasn't just pull the pin and go because I was threaders. And it kind of just so happened that I was inquiring about how to go into a PhD. That was kind of how it came about. And the course leading program director of the Tactical Athlete Performance Centre, where I now work, gave me a message going, "Are you still up for doing PhD, but would you also like to do some lecturing?" And that's where that started. And that then shaped the rest of that time. It was just a case of, don't pick your masters up. So thankfully I didn't. But the transition out was quite an interesting one, in the fact that I went from, there were points from kind of doing the masters, the undergrad, where you see things happen, you present the evidence, and people go, rock, paper, scissors, knife, and you go, But then also the transition out then became almost a bit easier, because I was like, all right, I'll go and do this side and talk to people that are interested in that area and learn and just learn and learn. But the transition out ended up being quite a fun one, in that I was doing my dissertation for my master's, doing my data collection. So I effectively went on my resettlement leave, start my data collection, and then we're doing a current piece of research with a specialist population group, and then effectively started doing data collection with them, but just in a different place. So it was quite nice in the fact that you just changed the location effectively, and then it was then going into kind of the write-up of the masters, write-up of those pieces. So it almost felt quite organic and like you step out, step back in, because you're working with sort of people with similar sense of humour and those pieces, which was quite fun. And then kind of the step out of the door, as it were, the moment you go, I know for me it was 31st of May. That was the date, so a month away basically. When we're chatting now, it was quite a weird piece in the fact that I knew what that date meant. My wife kind of, she knew that it meant something, but to everybody else in the world, it's just another day. But it was quite interesting in the fact that I'd had that amount of time off, however long it ended up being quite a while, because I was quite intelligent with my leave. But I had a big period of time off, and then kind of that day, and realistically, there was no difference in that day other than the fact that I was going from being in the Royal Marines to out with the Royal Marines. And it was just that day where there was lots of stress around it because of different deadlines as well. But that day I had in my brain, but no one else did. And so when you're getting a bit like, hyped up or upset about it or whatever, because it went in just waves, peaks and troughs of going, I'm fine. Oh, Jesus Christ, what am I doing? Oh, I'm fine. I'm Jesus Christ, what am I doing? And that day came around. It was like, oh, okay. But in the grand scheme of things, no one else cares. Only you. So it's quite, that period of time was quite weird, but it was nice then settling into finishing the masters off, doing some of the research pieces, doing some lecture creation and those pieces for the masters as well, which was quite a cool piece. And then come the September, then started on as a lecturing on the undergrad that I did, which is quite a nice sort of roundabout piece to go. But because of how we work and how we operate, it's nice in the fact that because I work remotely most of the time because of how our course runs, we're still around sort of people who work in extremist contexts. So we're around those types of people. So you're still integrating. It's just then obviously the academic side of you're then surrounded by academics who are very kind of theory based, or especially within the wider uni, it's people are a lot more theory based or more very, this is academia. And it's almost, I think from the military side, you're used to just going after and getting stuff and you're master of your own destiny in some ways, but you're always used to like, I'll be proactive. Whereas you look around and go, no one else is doing this sound. And a lot of just don't ask, you don't get. You just get necky with it and just kill them with kindness and just go, yeah, cheers, thanks. And which is quite nice. But it's weird, but I've loved it, which has been the nice thing. I've absolutely loved this transition across. And at no point have I gone, I've made a mistake. I've gone, actually, no, I've loved this. And some of the opportunities I've got coming up are absolutely incredible. So I'm like, why would I have stayed? I got to the point where that's not what I wanted to do anymore. Things have changed since I was a 13, 14-year-old. Got a family, got a wife, got kids. Like I wanted to go across to actually, I found a new passion and this became my passion. And the more I read, the more I dug into stuff, the more I talked to just incredibly intelligent people that we're lucky to be able to collaborate with. It shows you how much you don't know. And then in lecturing as well, it also shows you how much you don't know. And that for me is almost, I don't know this. I want to know this. I want to know more. I just want to be curious. I just want to look for those answers or have that bit of doubt to then go, let's look into that. Oh, let's look into that. And let's just dig beneath the surface and see what potentially the mechanisms are or whatever that might be. Yeah, it's in a roundabout way.
On reflection, do you think that you were always kind of destined to follow this kind of path then? Have you always been curious and always been interested?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, in that regard, yes. I think in that regard, my family loved to remind me that when I was finishing college, I got my A-level results and I never wanted to go to uni. I never wanted to go to uni. I wasn't fussed. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I always wanted to join the One Read. So that was kind of on the results day. My auntie and uncle ring me up and go, we think you should go to uni. We'll pay for your freshers tab. And at that point, I'm like, well, I could just go for a month. But I was like, no. And I'm quite stubborn. So as soon as someone goes, you should do this, I'm like, but I don't want to. So no. So it was kind of on that side, I didn't want to do it. But then sort of in the later years, I was like, well, actually, no, I enjoy this subject. I'm already reading around it. So why shouldn't I just go get a bit of paper for it? And then that kind of then grew into a proper almost love for it. But on the curiosity side, yeah, it's nice being curious. I think it's a fun way to live, being curious. How does that work? Why does that do that? If I do that, why does it do that? Of almost like if you're looking across the S&C side of it, of I know that if I give this stimulus, I should get roughly this response. There's obviously some variables, but why? Why, if I think that, does it do that? Why does that happen? I think that having that why is quite a nice thing and understanding those pieces.
Yeah, the why gives the buy-in.
Yeah, it gives a buy-in. And you see it across domains from kind of the leadership side to everything else. If you understand the why, I think that's one of the things kind of going off on a tangent of you see so many people now go to uni. I think uni is a brilliant thing, but not necessarily for everyone. Some people just go because, well, school is very much geared towards uni. I remember being at college and then going, me going, well, I'm going to do my application to join the corps as part of, I can't remember what session it was, cleared it with a teacher, they were happy, and then teacher changed, just thought I'd double check, no, can't do that now. Were you going to go to uni? No, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Again, the stubbornness just comes out. It kills me off sometimes, but there you go. But it's almost one of those things that, yes, it ends up, you gear people towards it, but not everyone needs it. And if not everyone needs it, then like, why? Because if you don't have that why, then realistically, are you going to go to all your sessions? Are you going to dig in when you'd rather be out boozing with your mates as to what people want to do when they're 19, 20? Why get yourself into however much debt to then not actually use the thing that you've got? Whereas you could find something in those couple of years, gain a passion for it, and be potentially ahead of where someone was that went through the uni pathway because they've got experience within the role to then build up. That's my 50p on it. But I think it is one of those that if you have that why, it drives it. And if you have that desire to want to understand it, then you're going to be driven to want to know more, or to dig in when, yes, things don't go your way, or it might not happen how you see it, but that's the beauty of it, because you have that why surrounding it.
Do you think it stood you in good stead then, having that service background before you then went into the world of academia? And how has your time in the corps shaped your choices with academia?
So from where I work now within the Tactical Athlete Performance Centre, we're geared around people who work in extremist contexts, which means realistically we need the applied understanding along with the theoretical knowledge as well. And it's quite nice having that blend, because you're able to link things from your own experience into that theoretical understanding. And I think it links nicely that way. Yes, it works the other way of going, like people finish school, go into uni, and theoretically they're very good. If you're coaching an athlete, you know full well that it is not going to go how the textbook says it's going to go. There are so many variables that you have to play into, that life just being one of them, that there's going to be all of these other effects that happen. So yes, it's good having that and having that understanding, but if you don't have the applied knowledge before it, I almost think there's arguments for both. It's almost nature versus nurture debate, isn't it? Of what you need first. Yes, you need a bit of both, really. And I think that comes in from that side of having the understanding of how load feels on your back, how just much suck you get in when you've just got this load on your back, shoulders hurt, feet hurt, legs hurt, it's coming upwards rain and you don't want to be there anymore, but you know how it feels. Because then when you start lecturing about it and start talking about it and discussing it and then looking in the underlying mechanisms and those pieces, you then actually go, oh, that's why that happened. Okay, that's why that happened. Or, oh no, actually, when you look at some of the low carriage research, for example, it looks across like 3K. I'm like, come on, that's cute. You then start going, well, actually, I think in a way it gives you not the opportunity to tear it apart, but be very critical with it, because you go, well, real world, this is what's going to happen. So why is the research doing this? And then you can have a look at going, oh, well, that's probably why they did it, to get through ethics or whatever that might be. But having that, I think that the applied knowledge first, it means you can look and have that almost that overlaying criticality of some of the work within the military setting to go, well, yes, maybe from a lab side of it and those pieces, yes, it's going to be very reliable data, but is it valid to the setting? You're going to have that way up. And I think it's quite a nice position to sit in from this side of coming from that applied setting into now the more theory-based and doing it concurrently as well. On the way out of doing the undergrad and the masters, it was quite a nice, built more of a picture up. And then you can look at things, because we got, especially on the masters, we had a lot of freedom to kind of, this is a subject, for example, like optimizing physical readiness, for example, or optimizing cognitive capabilities, those pieces of, it's, look, this is your field of study, go for it, see what happens. And you can pick where you want to look. And for me, that was like, especially with the dissertation, you go, what interests you? What tickles your pickle? What have you found in the past that you go, oh, actually, no, the research says this, but I've experienced this. So I want to look at that because I don't think that's right. And you look at it from that lens of going, well, actually, I know that when I was hanging out my hoop, I couldn't do basic arithmetic or whatever it might have been. I couldn't remember this specific bit from a set of orders because I was absolutely hanging out my hoop. So what effect does that have? But let's look at it. Let's investigate it. Let's see if there is an effect. So that's kind of the route I went down with it. And similar to some of the guys in my cohort, was almost driven by that curiosity from the applied setting to then look at it of, oh, well, actually, I've experienced this. So let's have a look because there's nothing in the research around it. So let's go.
It's a really interesting field of study, I believe. Do you remember Joe DeFranco, S&C coach over in America? So he was really hell-bent on sled pushing and did a lot of sled pushing with a lot of his athletes. And eventually the research caught up to what he had been already doing for 20 years with his athletes, that there are some phenomenal physiological benefits to doing sled pushes. And then all of a sudden the research catches on, and now it's like worldly known that this is a benefit. So it is a real interesting part about this theory versus practical application. And have you got an opinion on where the ratio should be?
How do you mean in terms of what should, like where it should sit? Should it just be, this is what the evidence says, so this is what we should do? Or is this what, it's an art and a science, isn't it really? You've got it almost, I think a lot of pieces at the minute is almost like, oh, it's evidence driven. Why is the evidence driving it? It should be evidence led. Because if you're helping lead it, you're the one leading, you have the understanding, yes, the underlying knowledge says this is what I'm going to use as my framework. But what happens when the athlete doesn't respond to how that sits? That's where the art comes in. I think that's where your understanding, that's why ChatGPT and whatever won't take over the human element, because it's a good copy and paste machine. It's a very good large language model. It sits and it can go, well, this is what this says. So yeah, there you go. Have the textbook definition, have the textbook answer for your problem. But the moment things become nuanced, the moment things don't quite fit the normal periodization model, whatever that might be, it doesn't know what to do. And then it goes off of what your bias is anyway. So it then feeds on what you're giving it to then give it back to you. So you're effectively you're the one feeding it. So it's going to answer what you want. It's going to be biased to what you're answering it. I think it's very much, yes, you should see what the research says. You should see what's actually work, because there might be a better way to do it. Actually, if we found a better way, yes, we could do this instead. Right, let's try it. Happy days. I found really good benefits from it. Sound, let's go. Speak to the athlete, you go, actually, I've got a hunch and I think this is right. I think this is going to work. And if they go, Sam, let's do it. Let's go. You go, all right, go, Sam, let's try it for, give it the time, give it the 6 weeks, give it 12 weeks. Has it worked? What's the objective marker? Has it worked? Yes. How do you feel? I feel pretty good on that. Amazing. Sound. Let's roll that out to a couple more people, so on and so forth. So you almost have that. And also you can just have because there's always going to be gaps in the research. There's always going to be some gap. So you go, well, I've got a bit of a hunch about this. This says this and this says this. So surely this should work. Have a go. Try it. As long as you're not doing harm, which, pardon me, realistically, you're not going to be. So have the test of going, well, the research doesn't say anything around this, but I know roughly everything around it is pointing in the right direction. Why not? In theory, it should work. Let's try it. And then the research might catch up. Or if you're in kind of the academic space of going, well, actually, I might just do the research to see if it works. Because if it does, amazing. If it doesn't, sound, we've got some more knowledge to put into the knowledge base for people to go, no, someone has done that. Okay, sound. I might not try it, or I might put it in, but not sort of massively put my hopes on it.
Do you find that there is a lot of confirmation bias in the scientific community?
Yes, in a way, for some. I think there are, and you get it everywhere, don't you? I think it's one of those that I think science and that side of things in the research community, yes, it might not, it'll be apparent, but I don't think it's necessarily too abundant. There are people who like looking at certain things because that's what they like doing, especially when you start reading around stuff. But then also they look and they delve into it and you're like, there is a wealth of knowledge in this area because you've basically spent your whole life looking into it. And you go, like, yeah, fair one. You've dug in and actually there is something there and they've gone for it. I think more of the problem is the, am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, you can say what you like.
Shitfluencers. I think the shitfluencer lot are the, like, they're the ones like, not all the ones causing the problems, but a big chunk of it of either they're getting paid to say something by a company because they're pushing a product, or they're necessarily a little bit misunderstood about it. And that's not anyone in particular, but you go, actually, you've typed into Google Scholar what you want, or you've typed into some AI large language model what you want, and it spat something out for you. That's not actually understanding the subject or calling experts out on the subject that you know, very, like, I can't remember what the curve's called, where effectively the moment you know a little bit, the
Dunning-Kruger effect.
But yeah, the confidence goes up. The moment you know a bit more, it goes down, and you go, well, actually, I know nothing. And then it's only throughout however long of study you then go, actually, no, I know a fair amount. The initial confidence of, I've read 2 papers, I'm an expert on this area. Everyone saw it during COVID, didn't they?
Mm.
Where everyone became an expert in microbiology, and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, can you hear me go? Okay. Oh, Karen, when did you do your PhD? Over a 6-month period? Oh, sounds amazing. Sorry, I'll get off my high horse in a second.
Please stay on it.
No one needs that. But I think the problem then arises there. Look at something from currently relevant. The sub 2-hour marathon, incredible. The fact that 3 people broke the world record. Second place didn't even get filmed across the finish line because everyone's got, and he still ran sub 2. Anyway, the low carb lot on Instagram are still gobbing off saying that it should be fat first across that. And you're like, oh my God, like, they were taking on 120 grams of carbs, like, across an hour period. That's astronomical. That's outstanding. But you still go, oh yeah, fat will be a better fuel source for this. You're like, oh, grow up. Have a look. Everyone has their own bias towards something. Yes, everyone's going to be slightly more, oh, I like to look that way a little bit more. You do get people very polarized, whether that's just because it's how they get hits and how they make money. That's, you do you type thing. I think it does then polarize everyone else that then looks at it. If everyone ends up going, well, I'm in this space, I'm in this space. You're like, let's just take a little bit from everyone and go, well, actually, let's have a holistic view of this. Let's look at a bit of everything and go, if we're purely going to go off of that, can we not see that there might be a detrimental effect? If we purely do this, is there going to be a detrimental effect? Let's try and make, obviously, if you're going to go sport, if you're going to be the Kipchoge's of the world, if you're going to try and run a sub 2-hour marathon, yes, your training is going to be very, very specific around running. But the rest of the normal human beings outside of the elite sport population, which at the end of the day, elite sport is looking for genetic mutants. That's what you want. But around normal, everyday human beings, everyone needs a bit of something. Everyone is going to have a slightly different bias towards something because every human being is different. We all look very similar, but we all have lungs and we all have a heart, we all have veins and arteries. But yes, you might feel better off of eating a little bit more of something than something else. And that's fine. That's okay. That's where the variation comes into it. And that's where you can have fun yourself on it rather than getting too polarized down it. And I think, kind of coming back to the original point, because I've got a long route for a short drink of water, is I think there's bias everywhere. I think everyone's going to have their individual bias and everyone's going to have it. I think it's almost having that self-awareness, because if you have the self-awareness, you know when to rein yourself in, you know when to kind of, you know if you might be a bit biased towards something. So it's then in your own interest to look around the other side of the coin. And it's around having both sides of the story to then go, well, actually, the weight of evidence suggests this. I've looked at both. The weight of evidence is here. So that's kind of where I'm going to put my money. But I have an awareness of this as to actually that there are limitations, because there's limitations to everything. Like, nothing is perfect. There's always going to be limitations. There's always going to be a way to pick yourself up. Nothing is ever perfect. Nothing is ever 100%. So let's work off of, let's look around. Let's have a look and see where things can fit in.
You've touched on a really interesting point there, there is so much information out there now. I think for the typical man on the street, woman on the street, where do they go to find out what the accurate information is because, like you said, there's so much conflicting information. There's so many different LLMs. There's so many different podcasts and articles and journals and magazines and books and YouTube videos, etc., etc. How do you know what is true and what works for you?
Do you know what? I think that's an excellent question. I really don't know. I don't know if there is a silver bullet. I think it's almost I think on some regards, it's finding something that works for you. If you are curious about those pieces and then kind of play around with it, of have the basic understanding. But with regards to how do you know what information source is right, what's wrong, it's quite a tricky one in the fact that you've then got to, if you're not wanting to sit through and read hours and hours of scientific literature, because let's be honest, it sometimes puts you to sleep. And it's sometimes like the data analysis. I've by no means a data analyst, and you look at the stuff and go, right, okay, yeah, all right, I think, yeah, all right, I can go off of that value. I know that's right. Yeah, okay, that's you read the description or the discussion. All right, okay, yeah, that's, and you piece pieces together. The more experience you get, the more of an understanding you get around data analysis, the better. It makes your life easier. But if you're coming into it, if you just like you're not looking around that, it's a minefield, and it's not helped when like the comment section on Instagram and YouTube turns into just a war scene where everyone's shouting their opinion and you're like, oh my God, right, okay. I think something that's been lost, common sense.
Same, really.
How much is too much? It's one of those of going, well, how long is a piece of string? Only you know that. You know what feels right. You know what feels wrong. You know, actually, if without chucking my own hand grenade up and trying to catch it and fumble the pin back in, of like on the nutritional side of it, of actually, if we look at a well-rounded plate of food, we can't really go far wrong. If you're eating just purely raw meat, probably not going to be good for your insides. Let's be honest, the Liver King was having some nutty in there, so it's not all it's meant out to be. Let's have a decent bit of protein. Let's have some carbs. Let's have some veg on there. I mean, we can't really go too far wrong with that. All right, we're exercising more. Sound. Let's increase the carbohydrate content and potentially look at cooking the veg up, because then you can increase the calorie density on it by cooking it in, like if you're baking it in the oven, for example, put a bit of oil on it and those pieces. You can incorporate those and you can increase those depending on what you're doing, or decrease depending on, again, what you're doing. So it's then looks at going that old adage of everything in moderation, because at the end of the day, life's a bit too short not to have any chocolate or a biscuit. I mean, I'm an absolute biscuit fiend. I can't have them open in the house because otherwise they'll just get absolutely demolished. But then you either incorporate it, or I know that actually I'll end up doing something stupid fizz-wise anyway, so let's just go for it and see what happens.
The old offset method.
I think if I didn't do fizz, I probably wouldn't fit through the door. I enjoy food far too much not to do fizz.
The enjoyment is, again, an interesting factor, like to get buy-in of nutritionally what you're doing, performance-wise what you're doing. There's got to be an element of enjoyment.
Oh, yeah.
I feel.
Yeah, and this is, I think, a big piece that I almost think gets lost as well, where people do it because they want that thing, but the thing is over there somewhere. And if you don't enjoy the process on the way, you're probably not going to get to it, or you're going to have a very shit time doing it. And then when you get to there, you don't want to then carry it on. It's all about creating those habits and actually how do we, if you look from the health side of it, because at the end of the day, you can't build athletic performance if you're looking just kind of not from just the base level human to wanting to be an athlete. You can't build anything without that foundation of just health and well-being. But if you just look at kind of normal population group of they don't enjoy going for a run. It's like, okay, well, what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy walking? Yeah, I enjoy walking. I enjoy pottering outside. Do you enjoy yoga? Yeah, sound amazing. Do that. Look at these things that actually go, well, that piques my interest a little bit. That sounds fun. I'll try that. Because then if you go, well, that was fun, I might try that, or I might do it a couple of times a week because I had fun doing it once, so let's have another go. And it's just layering in like that of enjoying it and, pardon me, and using that as your guide. Because at the end of the day, if you're not enjoying it, are you really going to carry it on when kind of you reach that goal, whatever that might be? So if you reach that goal and then off the back of it, you go, well, I don't need to do it anymore because, well, I reached the goal. So what's the point? Actually, if you create the habit on the way, you then carry that lifestyle factor on. It's not about it's more about the journey than it is that end point. It's the person you become along the way rather than that end piece. The end piece is nice, but the journey's the fun bit. The training is the fun bit. The training is the bit where no one else is around and you get to see who you are by yourself.
Very well said, my friend. We probably should have covered this earlier on, but can you, not necessarily looking for the textbook answer, but can you explain what tactical human performance actually is?
So if we go off of, I'll do this in two parts, if that's okay. So if you look at kind of human performance optimization in terms of kind of a textbooky kind of definition, you're looking at effectively bringing about a change within an athlete, within their biological potential. So you're looking at increasing their physiological capacity, their cognitive capacity, but within what they can do as a normal human being by giving them a phys intervention, by mental skills training, those pieces, or getting them to sit down on the site to unload any snags that they may have, sort their sleep out, those pieces. So you're looking at that human and not augmenting them in any way. From a tactical standpoint is more, they work in extremist contexts. So what that means is if they mess up, someone might die. It's probably the best way of describing things. So you look at that and go, well, actually, if we look at those kind of together, we're looking at actually how do we keep this human operating, especially if op tempo's high? Where do we sit? What do we do around the kind of the training variables around that? How do we improve their performance, but also maintain readiness? Because there are some units that you will need to be probably at about 80% and maintain, because if we're trying to peak you for a date you don't know, you can't. Like if you're trying to peak someone for the Olympics, effectively, you know what date the race is going to be, you know what competitions they're going to do in the lead up, you can hit those peaks within that periodization structure. However, within that tactical setting, realistically, you don't know when game day is, so you need to kind of maintain within reason. There are going to be ways that you can push things, looking off of kind of individual, like kind of the daily readiness side of things, and you can push things if people are feeling good and draw them back when they're not, or you know that actually they've been in the field all week, so we're going to draw it back. Like they've been on the hill, they've been having to deal with wildland fire side of things, right? We need to draw them back, we need to unload them, right? That's probably not going to be the optimal time to do a 1 hour end back squat, so right, let's unload them, potentially get them in the pool or just get them to chill out because they've just been under load for a long period of time. It's looking at it's quite nuanced really, in the fact that it's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily fit into the perfect structure, which is, I think, what I find quite entertaining and quite fun about it, is the fact that there is nuance to it. You can fit those structures in, and if you periodize it in the right way, you can bring about some quite good changes. If you understand, actually, let's look at what the priority is within this block, right? It's developing aerobic capacity, for example, right? We can only do 2 sessions that week. Sound, they're a Monday and a Friday, or they're a Monday and a Thursday, for example. Well, we know those days are probably going to be more based around the aerobic side of things. Let's have a look what else they've done in the program and let's push that. And it's around having that, basically.
Something that's just come up with me there as you're going through that is, how do I know if I'm a tactical athlete? Because the terminology tactical, your immediate thought is military units, special forces units, etc. But what is a tactical athlete?
So originally from the literature, it came around from the Department of, what was the Department of Defense at the time in the States. I think was it Iraq or Afghan, when they were out there and they realized they weren't physiologically prepared, and basically coined the term tactical athlete. And it originally sat around the military because they were seeing the issues around it. It then developed, and it was developed in a way because you almost needed people to feel special around it, for want of a better term. Is like, actually, are they athletes? Depends on the role, I think, is probably more the best way to describe it. But I think it's usually, if you work in those kind of extremist population groups, like you could constitute air traffic control as an extremist population group, because realistically, if they mess up, it can go very bad. But that's more down the cognitive side of things. Same with the submariners. That's where things become more like health and well-being, and they're going to have to be switched on mentally. Whereas if you're a grav on the front line, you need to be physiologically prepared again, it's almost how much is too much. You need to be up there, but then also you need to be pretty switched on. That will help offset that if you're not necessarily as switched on. But you need to be kind of firing on all cylinders, but also be able to fire when you're not at your best as well. Because at the end of the day, you can't control when stuff happens. So it's understanding that. And that kind of works more within the military context. You then have that within police, fire, paramedics, those pieces, because you're on shift patterns. Because you're on those shift patterns, you're outside of normal circadian rhythm. Those pieces, you're going to have there's going to be some form of negative consequence if you are on a night shift. Humans are not nocturnal creatures. It doesn't happen like that. Especially when you're on a 2 on, 2 off, 4 off, 2 days, 2 nights off, for example. In 2 days, you ain't going to turn nocturnal. You just basically survive, get what head down you can, and then sleep in the day again where you can, how you can. So to kind of answer the question again, can go right around the houses, is kind of if you're in that population grouping that you potentially life can be in the balance. If you're looking down those service populations of military, police, fire, paramed, you're probably within that kind of realm.
Cool, thank you. Talking about those kind of populations then, can you talk about the differences between the tactical athlete and the athlete, and why does there need to be a distinction?
So I think there needs to be that distinction in the fact that where you look at how they operate, in that if a rugby player makes a mistake, he passes the ball wrong, he gets intercepted, or they try to get scored, they lose the game, whatever that might be. If a tactical athlete does that, someone potentially dies. That's in terms of the crew trade-off. That's kind of the big one. The others are, you look in elite sport, you go in, actually, you're probably, especially the kind of top end clubs within those big sports, you're quite looked after in ways, but you've got the physio there, you've got those teams there, you're prepared to hit that point in time where you've got all those teams around you, you've got all those people around you to make sure that your performance is as good as it can be on game day. Whereas within the military side of it, you don't necessarily know when that's coming. Yes, there's a lot of support structure around it. However, it might come when you're feeling at your worst. You might be back to back in, you might be doing whatever that might be. You might have just gone out and now you're coming back you're going back out because something else has happened. Whether that's like paramedicine, for example, you've literally drop someone off and next thing you know, you've had a mass shooting somewhere. Right, okay, let's go. It all comes down to that context piece where kind of content is king, context is God. Of the moment you have that context overreaching it and looking at it as to what does that mean for that individual, that's kind of the big piece around it. Those are kind of that context piece. I think that is that key separator between what a normal athlete is and kind of more the tactical athlete realm of, you've got those two kind of, yes, they need to be separated. Yes, you can pull bits from the other, but just because it's worked in an elite sports setting doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work in the tactical setting.
Do we take it seriously enough outside of the military?
How do you mean physical, in terms of physical readiness?
As both physical and cognitive.
I'd probably say no, especially when you look at the police is a big example. Paramedicine, I think, is another big one. In the physiological demands of that role can be quite high. It might be running after an assailant. It might be running up however many flights of stairs to then provide first aid. If you are absolutely at max chat and you're at VO2 max going up those stairs, your decision-making capacity is going to be a lot less when you get up there, no matter what your role might be, whether it's police, whether that is paramedicine, whether that's firefighter, whatever it is. If you're not as fit, if you're hitting max chat and then being asked to make some form of decision or a procedure or make some form of intervention or interception, the ability for you to make that decision is going to be compromised. Yes, if you've got more experience, there are nuances to it. Yes, if you're more experienced, you've had more experience within those situations, the schemas are in place so that you can effectively make those decisions right. But if you add fatigue into the mix, especially physiological fatigue into the mix along with stress, there's a lot of then variables that it's just almost like flip a coin, let's to see where this is going to happen. So, and that's a big reason that with kind of the paramedicine side, not necessarily on the physiological side, but like cue cards or crib cards of writing down mechanisms of injury and those pieces, or vitals and those bits, but also has the kind of what information is needed on that card. Commanders and stuff like that use it all the time. But the theory behind it is actually when you're absolutely ball bagged, bang, I know what I'm doing. And it becomes a process, because you almost need to stop yourself getting in the cognitive loop, especially if you're under fatigue and stressed. The ability to potentially go into that cognitive loop is more and more and more. So I think it's one of those things that I think it's something that could be done better. And I think dropping the standard isn't the right answer for that problem. The right answer for the problem is potentially making training longer so that people can hit the standard to be able to get them. That goes for the military as well. You've got a less fit population group coming in the door. It goes across all public services as well. You've got a less fit population group coming in the door. You've seen the national average of fitness levels and obesity levels go up. So if you look at that of going, well, actually the people we've got coming to us aren't as physically robust as they have been in the past, right? We keep the entry standard where it is, but we make training longer so that then they can hit that point in time, or we need to put something in place prior to them coming in, giving them some form of intervention before they come, to make sure, or to help them aid in getting to that standard that we need them to get in, to make sure that they're safe just doing their job. Because if you're not safe doing your job, Jesus Christ, you become a risk yourself. You imagine running up how many flights of stairs up to deal with a heart attack, and you end up giving yourself one on the way up because you've tried to sprint up 10 flights of stairs. It's one of those things that, actually it should be taken more seriously, but I think there's probably almost, in a backwards way, risk aversion, in that if you look at kind of the risk of not getting people in the door because you need people to come in to fill those gaps. Well, if we put a fitness test in the way, if we put some form of additional testing in the way, is that going to be a blocker for more people? So then people don't want to come and do the job. So I think it is a tricky situation. And I'm glad I'm not the one making this. I just comment on it. It's a nice position to be in. But I think given the data around the area and the literature around the area, it is one of those things that is very important, in the fact that you need these capacities to aid you in that performance, because at the end of the day, you need to be able to provide that public service, because you don't want to then become a risk to yourself, but also the team that you're working with.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that's come up for me there. One about having systems so that you're not relying on memory, you're not relying on the skill set, you're following a system that I think has a massive carryover for all areas of your life. You're not relying on the soft, squishy human. You're just executing the system, which will allow you to get to the outcome at a safer and more efficient route. That, I think, is beautiful.
There is, however, sorry to interrupt, there is almost a trade-off though with, like, through rehearsal. If you are rehearsing, I think we've talked about this before, of like they've shown it with police officers disarming someone with a pistol, but because they've been practicing with dummy pistols and then handing it back, that they then go into a real life situation where they're under stress, they then hand it back, and then suddenly the moment everyone's a bit confused, and then they quickly take it back off them. But because you're in a stressful situation, you then go into the loop. So it's important to make sure that, yes, while you make it autonomous, that's why the military works so well with, like, stripping the weapon down, or going through kind of those basic functions of the rifle. You drill it because then it becomes second nature. So that you just go through everything to make sure that it's good to go. And it's just drilling those pieces so that when something does go wrong, you just bang what you need to do, sound happy days, we're good to go again. It goes into second nature. But there is almost a trade-off of, you need a little bit of the human being in there going, no, that's not right. Especially if you're handing someone the weapon back. Sorry, mate.
Practice makes permanent, not perfect.
Yeah, 100%.
The other thing that I wanted to double click on is, for that tactical athlete, you're saying that having a longer runway, so that if you are starting from a more deconditioned start line than has always been, especially when we first joined services. What about at the far end? How do you balance durability with longevity, say?
How do you mean, sorry? So if you're...
So there is going to be a trade-off between intensity of training and potential then risk of injury or shortening your careers. How do you keep people durable and also keep them active and capable for a full career, rather than beating them up so badly they're only good for 5 years and then...
A big one's education on what they should be doing, what necessarily is potentially a bigger risk. I think there's almost a little bit of I think there is a bit of a risk aversion especially when it comes to, obviously for a while, strength training became the very big, we need to carry load, so let's go and get really strong. Yes, it has its place, but not at the detriment of developing that aerobic capacity. So if we can understand those of going, actually, can we make these people better at their job? To get people to be sensible with their training, and not absolutely hammering everything at one point in time. But that comes back to the education piece. I think from, if you had a magic wand of kind of the cycles of the work cycles and the op tempo that people are on, potentially being more picky with jobs, depending on what branch of the military you're in, to slow that cycle down to enable people to recover between stuff. But at the end of the day, is that going to happen? Probably not. It's one of those, it's realistically it's not, is it? I think also looking at people's kind of the mobility, stability, those movement competencies, fundamental movement skills are something that it's what you consider to be quite basic, but people don't really do. I think that's a really big one. But also from kind of properly left field is looking down the almost philosophy side of it as well, of the philosophical side of it, of how do we make this person a better human being? Because if you can make them a good human in that period of time, you know that you're going to have a good operator or a good serviceman or woman, good paramedic, you have a good copper. You make that human being good, and then the person that goes out the door at the end can then enter society as being a good human being. And there's a really, really good book that I'm just finished off by Harry Moffat. It's called The Fourth Pillar. The Fourth Pillar, a view on modern stoicism in the human performance side of things. And it looks at Stoican philosophy, so the mixture between kind of the Stoics and the Spartans, and a lot of work that Percy Cerutties did out in Australia with Olympic athletes. And it's a really interesting look at stuff of going, actually, how do we make this human being the best version of this human being? Because if they're the best version of that human being, they're probably going to be better when it comes to race day. They're probably going to be better when it comes to making that decision. Probably better when it comes to push comes to shove. Are they going to make the right decision? If they're a better human being, probably. So it comes down to those pieces of having a bit of human decency and looking at things that through that lens, which probably in the world at the minute is not lacking, but for the people at the top of the tree, it doesn't seem to apply. And everyone else is going, well, actually, I can just shit on everyone else, so I might as well. Like, no, whoa, stop. Let's just be good human beings and everything else will fall into place. And people are more like, from kind of a leadership standpoint, people are more likely to follow you if you're a good human being, because people want to follow the good human. You set that example. What is a good human? You know it when you see it, and you know a dick when you see one. It's one of those. I think making someone a good human as well will help in that longevity piece, because you almost invest in the human being.
I think you have absolutely nailed that, and that sounds like an excellent place to stop on that bombshell.
We've got our first knowledge bomb. Happy days.
It was excellent.
Out for a second. What happened?
It was fantastic. Henry, thank you very much for your time. Before we do shoot, is there anything else that we haven't covered that you think we should at this stage?
I don't think so, Matt. I think it's been a nice conversation, and it's you've left me to go down some rabbit holes, so thank you for putting up with me. But yeah, I think it'd be good to come back on at some point and have some further chats about some further bits and bobs.
My friend, we could talk for hours and days. There's many different rabbit holes that we could go down, and maybe this is something that we should do on a semi-regular basis.
Sounds good to me.
Matt, I just want to say thank you very much for joining me today, and it is a pleasure to be acquainted with you, and it's an honour to work alongside you as we do, and thanks for doing what you're doing, and thanks for looking after the tactical athlete population, and thanks for being a damn good human being.
Cheers, buddy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me. It's been it's a pleasure getting to work with you as well, and thank you very much for having me on.
Henry, you're a gentleman. Thank you very much, my friend.
Cheers, buddy.
Cheers, mate.